I'm having one time with Monty Nefero, and I'm going to put him in the crossface, and he's going to go down right now. Yeah.
I was pissed.
The Saba
because
Simba
this
thing.
match sucked. And Saba Sinner said, what the f am I even doing out here? So the Dream Team, that was actually my name for it. And I think there was another Dream Team basketball or something
Right.
earlier Olympics. But I think we might have been the original Dream Team. And that was, I'm the one that thought that up. And they liked it, so they went with
Should have trademarked that.
it. Yeah,
What's
Loved
going
it.
on here?
yeah.
All right, so you wrestle Backlund, our Broadways, whatever else. What is the transition for Greg Valentine after he finally falls to Backlund?
He didn't fall. He won the belt.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
He won the belt.
Second time I came up,
October 19th.
yes.
we did the double pin. yeah.
Right.
So I was world champion.
That was-
I'm always
You,
going
uh,
to say this, dude.
Did you actually defend that at one point?
Did you?
I think in the
No.
Capitol Center, no?
No.
But there's pictures with you
I took,
holding it.
I grabbed that belt, took a lot of pictures because I knew they're going to come and take it away from
How
me.
dare I
But
was so
they
pissed.
held the belt up for about 6 weeks until we came back
In New York. They
in
held
New York,
Right,
right?
right.
That was, so after the hour-long Broadway and then my first time, 79 and 80 up here, my first run with Backlund, then I broke Strongbow's leg and actually did more money with Strongbow than I did with Backlund.
Thank you for
Wow.
breaking his leg,
Yeah,
by the way. Thank you.
yeah. And he was beautiful. And that was all his idea. They weren't going to do
Nice,
that. He went
nice.
to Vince, let Greg break my leg.
There you
so
go.
I made a lot of money with Chief. So the second round, I came back up here, I think it was 82, and I did, worked with Backlund again, and we did that double pin. So then they held the belt up in Madison Square Garden. And so then we came back, and then I lost to him. But then I did the angle with Pedro Morales, where I suplexed him on a cement floor,
Yep.
and he sold it like a champ, and I hurt the hell out of my arm, and did gangbusters with Pedro Morales. I thought maybe they're going to give me the belt with Pedro, but they never did. So I ended up going back to the Carolinas, but I'm glad I did. So I went back there and broke Wahoo's leg. And
You and Indians.
didn't use the figure four on Wahoo because I couldn't get it on. I tried to put it on the dressing room.
Oh, his legs were
he
too
had those
thick.
big legs for
Yeah.
playing for the New York Jets and the Dolphins. He was a football player. I couldn't get it on, so I just did this thing where I hooked his leg on the ankle and just fell back. And he sold it like a champ, and I broke Wahoo's leg. We started, made a ton of money with Wahoo. And I'm going to give, I feel like I'm a tough guy now, but I'm old. I'm old now. But he made me, in my heyday, he made me tough. I wasn't tough till I worked with Wahoo. He beat the crap out of me, hit me in the face, me up so bad. Finally, I just got mad one day, and I found out, well, I'm a little tougher than I thought I was. I hit him point blank in his face, and he went down on his knees. And then he came up to my wife and I, and we were in Bennigan's. Remember Bennigan's?
Yeah.
In Charlotte later that night. And he goes, I just want to tell you, your husband's one hell of a man. He walked off.
That's funny.
And from that day on, I thought, well, I am a little bit tough. Only because he beat me tough. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 It does.
I wouldn't fight back before that. You know, I'd fight it.
I have to ask you because when you got your shot with Backlund the second time around in '82,
Right.
and then you fought with Pedro,
Right.
you were the center of my wrestling universe. You were my first real favorite wrestler, and
Thank
you've
you.
remained my favorite heel 40 years later.
Thank you.
So I need to know, did you make any kind of like case for yourself behind the scenes, like when you were close to beating Backlund but didn't. Then they put you with Pedro. Maybe they'll give me this belt. You're close again. Did you argue with them at all behind the scenes and try to make more of a pitch for yourself? Because this kid in East Northport was going crazy, going, how is he not have a belt? What a nerd I am. I need to know. Did you fight for on your own behalf to try to get these belts around?
Okay, here's one thing where I'll put Flair over what I do. Flair got into the office and he pitched himself. I should have done that, but I didn't. I hated going to the office. The only time I can remember going to the office is when me and Beefcake went and bitched about getting our tag belts back. That's the only time I can remember. I didn't go to the office enough. When I was in Crockett Promotions in Charlotte, I did go to the office more often. Flair was there all the time. Maybe that's why he was 17 times world champion. So I didn't do enough politicking.
So
That was my fault.
Flair and Hogan very similar that way with the behind-the-scenes ability to.
Yeah, they got Vince's
Dusty
ear.
Rhodes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Tony Atlas is a good friend of the show, and Tony
Right.
was telling me one time over dinner that, I don't know how true this is, that Vince sent you after him in a real match and told you to shoot on him. Is that a true story?
Tony said that?
He said that, yeah.
Tony might have had a few, but that's okay. What do you think?
Oh, Christ.
He said like you literally like beat out of him or
Ooh,
something
really
during
now?
a match.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
okay. Was that when he was Saba Simba?
Yes, yes. And Vince wanted to get rid of the character, and they sent you out to finish the job.
No. You know what, though? That's not true. That's not true. But I did get mad at Tony in the ring because I said, what the kind of gimmick is that? And he wasn't selling nothing for me. And so I just started hitting him. Bam, bam. I was pissed.
Did Saba
'cause
Simba
this
think
match sucked. And Saba Simba said, what the am I even doing out here? And I was half-assed babyface then anyway. I was making my turn.
Okay.
And I was in a bad mood. And Tony, you know, Tony could probably just knock me out anyway because he's got those big fucking arms.
Yeah.
And he's such a nice guy. But we were hitting each other really hard. And I just got fed up with it. But the finish was a up finish where I think, oh yeah, I held him and Jimmy got the guitar or something. I still had a guitar for some reason. Jimmy brought it out or something and went to hit Tony over the head with a guitar, but he hit me instead. So then I did my babyface turn kind of then. Saba Simba left, and then I'm like, I'm going to hit you, Jimmy Hart, and the people popped on that. So, that being said, I can see why Tony thought Vince told me to go. But you know what? I could never beat up Tony Lat. Look at that. How are you going to beat that up? That's like trying to beat up Mike Tyson.
You ain't kidding, man.
Christ. You know?
And he's still got the guns. It's ridiculous.
But you know what? The match, I was so disgusted in the match that maybe I was throwing one too many potatoes. But he was throwing them back at me, you know, potato, you know.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
So I could see why he might have thought that I was gunning for him.
Greg, I don't
I
know.
would pick a lot smaller guy than that.
I know nothing about nothing, but I
Yeah.
was totally surprised. I did not know that you were married to Medusa Maselli.
No, never.
You-
I wasn't married.
Okay,
Word.
so where did I hear that from?
I don't
Where did-
know. It's bull. She was down. I guess she stayed with me about 2 years.
Oh, so you
That was it.
Dating.
you were dating then?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
She moved in with me, and then she moved out.
So, again, how was like she's a very A personality, at least from what I see on interviews and stuff. Was that hard, like a hard relationship to
What do you
deal
mean
with?
by a personality?
Like very
Outgoing? Outspoken?
very
Intense?
very I'm the boss type of person.
Oh.
It seemed like, right? It's like when you see her
Alpha
at
female?
any interview
Well,
you see
that's
with.
probably why we didn't get along because
Okay.
you know
Okay.
I was a quiet person, and
Like the TV dinners were on the wrong side of the fridge or something? Put them
yeah,
on the other side?
I don't know how we got along. You know, I took her on the road with me when we went to Europe and different places like that. So I guess around the wrestling business it was okay, but just having, she came into my house and it just didn't work out. You know, it wasn't a good fix, and I should have never done that. And it actually pissed me off when I think about it because it was a bad scene. But thankfully, I met the love of my life, Julie, and I was with Julie before Medusa, and then me and Julie got back together and got married, and 26 years now we're still together. So, so it just it was a wild time of my life, and no, that's why we didn't get along, you know.
Any particular opponent you had in your career that was a high profile, one of your legendary feuds perhaps? Was anybody really hard to work with, or that you felt you had, I got to carry him?
I was fortunate to usually be programmed with, like Ronnie Garvin was great, and Piper was great, and Tito was great. Morocco, I worked with Morocco some.
How about JYD?
JYD only had 2 matches with him.
Mm-hmm.
He was hard to work with.
Okay.
But he was so over with the people. There's a lot of guys, Steamboat had great matches with him. There's a lot of guys, and my dad taught me, there's some guys you just have to learn how to work around them. Especially if you're the champ. So you can just take your time and go out there and circle your opponent, and then just basic, like the Ultimate Warrior when I worked with him. I would just let him run back and forth till he got tired himself out, and then I'd work with him. But I couldn't work my style with him. There was a lot of guys like that. You just had to work. You had to fake it through and work it out, and eventually they'll come around to you.
What percentage works for you? And being an old school wrestler with a famous father, watching WrestleMania become a thing that's now the Super Bowl. Obviously, Vince McMahon Jr. always felt entertainment is the bigger factor in his presentation. What's the percentage for you that you feel is acceptable between wrestling and entertainment? Has it gone too far over the years, or is there, how would you like to see it broken down? How much of a percentage would be wrestling and how much would be entertainment, considering you saw both over all these years?
Oh, that's a hard question. The WrestleManias do good all the time. And first of all, I think there's too much. There's too much wrestling on TV. Too much,
Yeah.
And they got it. What's it on? 4 nights a week?
It's
nonstop.
It really is
3
nonstop.
hours one night, 3 hours another night, and then they got the NXT, and then
Sure.
you got AEWs on twice a week.
Then there's TNA and the rest of the other little ones. Yep.
I think there's too much wrestling. People got to be hungry to watch it. I like it in the old days where you had Saturday night's main event when on NBC was a big thing once a month. You had TV in the daytime or whatever, and you push the shows, or WOR midnight on Saturday nights forever was here. It's just too much wrestling, and I think because of that, they run out of ideas to try to make everything look new, and they go, oh God, it's just too. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they can keep up. That's why it's lost its credibility, because there's too much wrestling.
Yeah. What was your feeling like? Holy I'm on NBC. I can't, who would have ever thought I was going to be on NBC?
No, that was a great feeling, being on NBC. Saturday night's main event once a month. That was great, and we had some great. Me and Brutus, I remember being on there a lot. We had some great matches with the Bulldogs, and that's such a good era, and everything. See, everything was so brand new and innovative, and we're coming out with this and that. Nowadays, what the hell are they going to give us for new? What's going to be new? It's like the 60s and 70s music. That was, and even the 50s, I'll go back to that far. That's a mainstay of music. That's where it started. Now you listen to nowadays, what the hell are we listening to? I mean, they can't follow their own act. And so that's what's wrong with wrestling. They should just shut it down for 6 months. Shut it down like they do baseball and football. Just shut it down and bring it back. That's what I would do.
Seasonal wrestling?
Well, no, just shut it down
Just
for
shut it
6
down.
months.
Make people hungry for it.
Make people starve.
Reboot. Yeah.
Starve for it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
when's it going to come back on? And
We were
then-
just we were
I
just
can see
saying the
that.
other day.
I can see that.
Growing up, Channel 9.
Yeah.
Could not wait for Channel 9 at midnight.
There was
right?
6 days in between to salivate.
Yeah.
So, Greg, tell me
Yeah,
a
that's what
little.
I'm talking about.
Tell
It's
me a
just
little
too
bit
much
about
now.
your father.
Okay.
You know, tell me what kind of man he was and what kind of relationship you had with him.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I never grew up with my father. I grew up with my grandparents. And my mother and my dad, they broke up. So I lived with my mother. My dad, she didn't want him to wrestle, so he went out wrestling, and eventually they got divorced. And then I lived with my mother, and my grandparents were right down the street, and I would just run to my grandparents all the time. So she let me stay with her grandparents, and I had kind of a wild mother. I'm sorry. She was a nightclub singer and everything, and she would bring different guys home, and it just didn't work out. So I grew up. My grandparents actually adopted me, and I grew up in a small town close to Seattle, Washington. And my mother's not long. She's not living right now, and God bless her. But she went to L.A. and met a guy down there and had a nice life, and I used to go visit her all the time. So, that being said, around when I was about 17 years old or something, my Aunt Virgie, she lived in Seattle, and she said, "Here, I want you." I'd never talked to my dad. I never even saw him, and I talked to him on the phone. And I was about 17, and he ended up flying me down to Dallas. He was a Texas heavyweight champion then, and I ended up staying down there 4 months with him on the road. What a wild time! And of course, right away I idolized him. And I'm about 5'10". I'm not full grown yet, about 190 pounds, but I'm pretty stocky. And he took me on the trips, and I think I finally said, "I want to be a wrestler like you." And he goes, "No, you're going to go back to Seattle. You're going to go to college," because I was just starting to go to college. I actually wanted to be so I was such a big music fan, I wanted to be in radio, a disc jockey or something like that. I wanted to be, or a newsman or anything. I was into radio. And so he says, "Well, I'll tell you what." He says, "I'll send you to Calgary." And I'm thinking, he's going to send me to Stu Hart. It's 40 degrees below zero up there. And he sent me up there with no wrestling shoes. And I'm going to get discouraged and I won't want to wrestle. But I learned really good up there with Stu, and it was really, really hard. And I got some horrible infection on my feet. And I couldn't wrestle I was laid up for 2 weeks. I had impetigo with the feet because of his dirty mat. And I finally got me some shoes, and I learned how to wrestle some, and then I stayed in touch with my dad, and I said, "You got to get me out of here. I can't take it anymore. I'm making $50 a week, and I'm staying at the Calgarian Hotel, downtown Calgary, and they got three channels on the TV, and 2 of them are French." I said, "I got to get out of here. Help me, please." So he sent me to Detroit. Eddie Farhat, Detroit. He was the original Sheik. So I went there and stayed at the Sheik's house in the basement. And he had his kid down there too, I remember. And he had a ring in the back. And I'd already been wrestling in front of people, right? So he just put me on the road. I never learned anything out there in that ring in the back, you know. I learned just going in there and winging it with hardly any preparation. Stu Hart didn't really teach me hardly anything. He taught me how to hook up and how to fall backwards, and that's it. You know,
And how to get a foot infection.
And throw that side arm punch, which I never used, and grab a headlock, just the bare basics. he used to take all the other guys and take them down and wrench them and ring them and break their arm or something. He didn't do that because I'm Johnny Valentine's son. Thank you, Stu. He's another one that's passed away. But, you know, I remember Brett used to sneak down and watch. But I really learned it from just going out there and doing it from scratch. Just going out there not knowing what the hell I'm doing. But along came a guy named Don Fargo. Don Fargo saw me, and one of the Fargo brothers, but he was by himself then. He had the blonde hair. He did the strut like Buddy Rogers, and he asked Sheik he named me Johnny Fargo, and we went to Buffalo, New York together, and I learned really how to work from him in tag matches, and we went to Texas together and back to Buffalo again, and then finally I went on my own. So my dad, I never used the name Valentine until he went down in a plane crash, and so I became Greg Valentine, and so the rest is history there.
How long into it did it take your father to give you his blessing? Because, you know, on the surface, when a fan, like such as us, hears that the first place you go is the dungeon, and the next place you go is the Sheik, the original Sheik, he must have been impressed that you survived these things. And at some point, did he say, okay? Because at first you said he told you no, so.
Yeah, so I think what changed his mind, so I didn't want to be a Fargo anymore. I said, can I just use the name Greg Valentine? And he says, yeah, but go as my brother, not my son. Because back in the day, you know, they're going to say, well, he's 40, 45 years old. He's too old. You know, everybody, back in that day, back then, you know, if you're over 50 or something, you were told to be a boxer or a wrestler, people thought. And I understood his feeling. So I went as his younger brother, Greg Valentine. But when he had the plane crash, then it was different. Then I became his son. But yeah, I got over as Greg Valentine, his brother. I went out to L.A. as Greg Valentine, and you know, so yeah, it all worked. But he had that horrible plane crash, crippled him from the waist down, and but he managed to live another 20 years, and he would never be in that wheelchair. He wanted to walk around with those crutches, those metal crutches, and so, you know, God bless my dad.
Your relationship with Andre the Giant, how did you get along with Andre?
Wonderful. I loved Andre the Giant.
You feel fortunate that he loved you back? Because I've heard that if Andre didn't like somebody, oh boy.
Oh, so in 1975, I'm working for Mike LaBelle in L.A., and they sent me to Japan. I got on this big 747, and it's empty, and I'm in the back, and the stewardess comes and there's a couple, she comes back to me in the back, says there's a couple guys up in first class, they want you to come up there. So I go on this big 747, and they had that spiral staircase that goes up to the first class on this big 747, and there is Andre sitting, and they're playing Cribbies and Arnold Skolin. So I'm hanging out with him, and of course Arnold knew my dad, and Andre had worked with my dad, so they invited me up there, and I'm drinking cognac, and I don't know how to play Cribbies, but I'm just glad to be up there, and I was face when I went through Japanese customs, but for the next 3 weeks, Arnold went back home early, so it was just me and the Giant for 3 weeks, going out every night to these Korean barbecues. I loved the guy. There was a story I tell a lot where we're trying to get a cab, and they see Andre, how big he is, and nobody will stop. So I says, hide behind there, Andre, and I'll flag a cab down, and as soon as the cab gets here, then you come around. So he come around, and the Japanese cab driver would go, no, and he'd get in the car to take off, and Andre reached down and grabbed the cab and pulled it up, and the wheels are spinning like this. It's like something out of a cartoon.
Wow.
The guy gets off and runs. So we finally got a panel truck. But a we got back to the Keel Plaza, very nice hotel there too. So me and Andre became great friends ever since that. I would be in the front part of this bullet train, and he'd yell at me, and I'd turn around, and he's way in the back, and all the Japanese people would look too. You know, they all looked, they were, you know, in unison. And Andre backs his big ass up against the aluminum back there, and lets this big giant fart, boom, and they all turn and look like this, and they look like this, and they all start laughing.
What were your thoughts on Adrian Adonis?
Oh, that was a mental case there too. I knew Adrian in Buffalo when I was working as Johnny Fargo, and nice guy, and he came up, and he was really a tough guy down deep. He knew how to wrestle. This Fred Atkins guy up in Buffalo there taught him how to work and taught him how to be tough. So, but he went goofy, you know. It was the drugs and that stupid gay gimmick he had. You know, we were friends, and one time he told me to get away from him. He said, "What are you talking to me for?" I said, "Oh, f you, you know." So I won't talk to you anymore. It wasn't long after that where he went off the deep end. So, yeah, I don't think too much about him.
Understood. Eric, where are you going to be the rest of the weekend?
All right, so tomorrow from 9 to about 4 o'clock or so, we're in New York City, the Big Apple. It's the Big Apple trading card. It's the Big Apple Con tomorrow at the
Might want to learn the event. Just saying.
The New York, it's the Big Apple trading card. Well, it's the Big Apple Con, the New Yorker Hotel, and that's over by Madison Square Garden.
Greg, it's got to make you feel great that all these fans still adore you after all this time and recognize you being one of the greatest at your profession of all time.
Well, I think, you know, a lot of that is because even if they were too young to watch me back then, some of these younger guys that are watching it that's on TV now, but they go back and look at the 80s, the 70s, 80s, 90s stuff, and they realize, oh, wow, it's a whole new thing here to me. It really looked good back then. So they're because of YouTube and because of everything else, and the Peacock Network replaying the WWE stuff, it gave me new life. And it's not like it's kind of like I'm still wrestling, but I'm not. I mean, they're seeing the stuff that I did 20 years ago, and they're appreciating it, or maybe longer. I don't know. But it's good to be appreciated still.